Before you begin this compelling journey of rediscovery and strength, ask yourself, what happens when a husband's harsh words push his wife to the edge? Can a public insult become the fire that reignites a woman's true spirit? If you're ready to witness a moving transformation and a bold reclaiming of pride, then hit that like button now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another empowering story. And tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. Mark stepped into the apartment that night with his usual cold, detached expression, like he carried the burden of the entire city on his back. Or at least that's what he wanted others to believe. Sarah, who was in the kitchen finishing dinner, heard the door slam shut, and instantly knew something was wrong. Over the past few years, she had learned to read the signs, the clipped tone of his voice, the heavy tread of his steps, and worst of all, the suffocating silence that always came before his fury. "Sarah!" he shouted from the living room, not even bothering to say hello or ask about the kids playing in their bedroom. "Did you look at this month's card bill? This is what you call being careful with money?" Her heart started racing, and anxiety surged through her. No matter how she answered, she knew he'd turn it against her. With a dish towel still in hand, she cautiously stepped into the living room where Mark held the statement with a look of sheer disdain. "I bought some clothes for the kids and a few essentials for the apartment," she said, trying to stay composed. Mark let out a laugh, but it wasn't from amusement. It was steeped in sarcasm and cruelty. "Essentials? Is that what you call it? You throw away my money on junk and act like it's justified." He took a step forward, thrusting the paper toward her face. "Look at this, a cosmetic shop? You really believe some face cream is going to fix what time's done to you?" Sarah felt like she had been struck. His words were brutal, slicing right through her. She tried to respond, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to take care of myself a little." "Take care of yourself?" he scoffed. "Sarah, look at you. Do you seriously think makeup and clothes are going to cover up what you've become? After 2 kids, you're not the woman I used to be proud of. Now, when I look at you, all I see is someone faded." He turned away, tossing the paper onto the table. "That's why I'm bringing Emily to the corporate event on Saturday. At least she knows how to show up properly in public." Sarah stood there, frozen. Had he really just said that? His young assistant. The words repeated in her head as she tried to process the sting. "You? You're not serious," she murmured, tears filling her eyes. Mark, unmoved, simply shrugged like it meant nothing. He poured himself a whiskey and went on. "Sarah, listen closely to what I'm about to say." "Enough!" Chloe cut in as soon as Sarah stopped speaking, her breath catching. "You can't let that man keep destroying you. You are not some piece of furniture in his home or a decoration he's grown tired of. You are an extraordinary woman. Do you hear me? Extraordinary. And you need to start believing that." "Chloe, it's not that simple," Sarah replied, the weight of her friend's words pressing down on her. Though deep inside, she knew Chloe was right. Trying to stand up after years of being torn down felt like moving mountains. Her heart ached with a familiar heaviness, a kind of quiet despair that had become too comfortable over the years. Every time she thought of breaking free, fear tangled around her resolve like vines. What would life even look like without Mark? Without the routines, even if painful, that gave her world some kind of structure. "No, it's not simple," Chloe admitted. "But it's not impossible either. Think about yourself. Think about your kids. What are you showing them if you let someone treat you this way? Sarah, you are not the shadow Mark wants you to think you are. He's tried to dim your light, but it's still there. You just need to let it shine." Her words struck deep. Sarah sat silently, staring down at the kitchen table, her eyes unfocused. She thought back to the beginning of her marriage, when she had been full of ambition and confidence. She remembered how she'd given up her job as a graphic designer to take care of her family, believing it was the best decision for everyone. But over time, Mark had stripped her world of joy, replacing it with duty, criticism, and silence. He made sure she never forgot she wasn't enough. She remembered the countless nights she had cried quietly in the bathroom, dabbing tears with a towel so the kids wouldn't hear. The way Mark's words clung to her, words that told her she was less than, that she had become invisible. They echoed louder in moments of stillness, and now at this table, something inside her flickered. A small whisper, barely audible, yet persistent. Maybe you deserve more. Sarah, are you still there? Chloe asked gently. I'm here, she answered, her voice quiet but steady. Good, because here's what we're gonna do. I want you to stand up, go look in the mirror, and tell yourself, I'm worth more than this. Then I want you to think about what makes you happy, what you need. And this Saturday, when Mark takes that girl to the event he disinvited you from, I want you to show him he can't erase you, that you're still that beautiful, strong, confident woman. Got it? Sarah stayed quiet for a moment. Something in Chloe's voice lit a tiny spark within her, a spark that began to burn through the fog of self-doubt. She imagined standing tall, not just in a mirror, but in her own skin. Could she still be that woman? Could she believe in herself again? For the first time in a long time, the idea didn't feel impossible. It felt necessary. I'll try, she whispered, still unsure. No, Chloe said firmly. You're not going to try, you're going to do. And once you do, you'll see that Mark has no hold over you. You choose who you are, not him. Sarah ended the call feeling just a bit lighter, though her chest still ached. But Chloe's words planted something inside her, a seed of strength. You choose who you are, not him. The phrase looped in her mind as she cleared the dinner plates. That night, after tucking the kids into bed, Sarah sat at the computer. She opened a browser and began searching. Salons, makeup tutorials, style guides. She felt nervous, but also a bit excited. Every click was a small act of rebellion, a tiny brick in a new foundation. In the next room, Mark snored, oblivious to the change beginning inside his wife. Sarah shut the laptop, a faint smile on her lips. There was still fear. But for the first time in ages, there was something more powerful. Determination. But not anymore. Today he was going to fund his own downfall. Sarah could still hear Mark's voice from the night before. Look at this cosmetics store. You still think some cream's going to fix what time's done to you? Fury rose in her chest like a fire. If he truly believed she wasn't enough, then she'd show him just how wrong he was. And if his world revolved around money, status, and image, then his beloved credit card was about to become the weapon for his own lesson. With a wry smile tugging at her lips, Sarah stood, grabbed her handbag, and walked out the door. The downtown Atlanta Lenox Pavilion Mall buzzed with morning energy. Sarah entered with purpose in her step, focused on one goal: to reinvent herself. Her first stop, high-end fashion. She moved through the boutique corridor, her heart racing, not with anxiety, but with a thrilling mix of defiance and intent. She was no longer the quiet, self-effacing wife who tiptoed around spending for fear of Mark's judgment. No, today she was something entirely different. Her footsteps echoed with purpose, each stride a silent rebellion. The polished windows reflected a woman who, for the first time in years, was walking into a space not to disappear, but to be seen. The scent of new leather, expensive perfumes, and polished wood infused the air with possibility. This was her battlefield, and she had arrived armed with courage and Mark's platinum card. She stepped into one of the most exclusive designer boutiques and was greeted by a young associate, dressed to perfection, who offered a polished smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How may I assist you?" the associate asked. Sarah inhaled deeply, lifting her chin, exuding a confidence she hadn't felt in years. "I need a full wardrobe," she said. "Dresses, trousers, blouses, everything, and I want each piece to turn heads." The associate blinked in surprise, but quickly regained composure. "Right this way. We've just received a new collection that might be exactly what you're looking for." For the next 2 hours, Sarah tried on elegant gowns that embraced her figure, silk tops that enhanced her complexion, and tailored pants that hugged her just right. With every glance in the mirror, she saw a part of herself returning, a version long buried beneath Mark's constant disapproval. Each fitting felt like therapy. As zippers slid up and fabric draped over her skin, she wasn't just dressing a body, she was reviving a soul. She watched as her shoulders straightened. Her smile became less forced, more genuine. This wasn't indulgence. This was reclamation. "This red dress," the associate said, adjusting the fit of a sculpted piece around Sarah's waist. "It's like it was designed just for you." Sarah turned to the mirror. The material hugged her like a second skin, and the vivid red radiated strength and energy. She smiled, genuinely pleased. "I'll take it, and the black one, the emerald green, and whichever heels go with each." She walked out of the boutique with arms full of luxury shopping bags and a sensation she hadn't felt in ages. Pride in herself. But she wasn't done yet. She wasn't going to overlook a single detail. Her next destination was a designer shoe store. She moved through the aisles with purpose, selecting heels that were refined and bold. Each pair felt like a statement. "I can stand on my own. I can walk with purpose." She picked black patent stilettos, red velvet pumps, and timeless beige heels that would match anything. The sales associate, clearly impressed, smiled as she rang up the purchase. "You've got excellent taste, ma'am. These shoes are just, wow, stunning." Sarah offered a calm, confident smile. "Thank you. I deserve them." Her voice didn't waver, not even slightly. The simple phrase wasn't spoken with arrogance. It carried years of unspoken pain, silent resilience, and a quiet reclaiming of power. For so long, she had denied herself even the smallest indulgences. Each pair of shoes felt like an armor piece, shielding her against the years of doubt and emotional erosion. With even more shopping bags in hand, she stepped out and headed for the final piece of her transformation. The salon she walked into was among the most exclusive in all of Atlanta. Sarah had heard whispers about it before, but had never dared to walk through its doors. Now, she pushed them open without a second thought. She was greeted by a stylist with a short, vibrant hairstyle who welcomed her warmly. "Welcome, ma'am. What can we do for you today?" Sarah took a seat in front of a full-length mirror and inhaled deeply before answering. "I want a transformation, a full one. I don't want anyone to recognize me when I walk out of here. I want to be new." The stylist beamed, clearly energized by the challenge. "Then you came to the right place. Leave it all to us." As the stylist gathered tools and products, Sarah's hands rested on her lap, clenched for a moment before relaxing. There was vulnerability in her request, but also courage. Courage to shed the shell she had been forced into for years. This wasn't just a makeover. It was a declaration. For hours, Sarah surrendered to the process. First, they treated her hair with deep conditioning. Then came the scissors, snipping with precision, shaping a sleek contemporary cut that perfectly framed her face. Once done, a warm-toned color was applied, giving her locks a vibrant, luminous finish. Afterward, she sat with a makeup artist who worked skillfully, lining her eyes in rich tones that deepened her gaze, blending earth-toned shadows that made them smolder. Her lips were painted a bold, luxurious red, confidence and power in a single swipe. Each brushstroke felt like a healing touch. As the colors bloomed across her face, Sarah felt something unlocking inside her, a version of herself she thought had been lost forever. The mirror wasn't just glass now. It was a window to a self she was finally ready to reclaim. When Sarah looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. It felt like rebirth. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers through her new hair. "What do you think?" the stylist asked. Sarah smiled, and this time, it wasn't tentative or unsure. It was the smile of someone who knew her worth. "I love it. It's perfect." At the counter, the receptionist handed her the total with a cheerful grin. Sarah handed over Mark's credit card without flinching. Let him pay for the damage he's done, she thought. That afternoon, Sarah returned home, her arms full of bags. Her children ran to her with laughter and open arms. But Mark wasn't there. He was still at the office, likely preparing for the weekend event, relishing his time with Emily. Sarah placed the bags in the bedroom and caught her reflection in the mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't see someone broken. She saw a strong, stunning woman reclaiming her identity. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop us a comment with your city or country. We love seeing how far these stories go. Chapter 3. The Grand Entrance. Saturday finally arrived, bringing with it Mark's much-hyped company gala. Sarah had orchestrated every piece of this day like a general mapping out a battle. Because deep down, that's exactly how it felt. A battle. This wasn't just a glamorous evening. It was her chance to show Mark, and herself, that she wasn't the defeated woman he had described with his biting words. She was something far greater. At home, the atmosphere was stiff with tension. Mark had spent the entire morning buried in calls and texts with his assistant Emily, finalizing every detail for the evening. He left early to pick her up, not even acknowledging Sarah or the kids. She watched him walk out the door with his usual air of smug self-importance, completely unaware of what was coming. "See you later, Sarah," he said casually, while adjusting his tie in front of the entry mirror. "And don't expect the call. I'll be tied up all night." Sarah, standing at the sink pretending to be absorbed with dishes, barely turned her head. But inwardly, a wry smile curled on her lips. "You don't need to call me, Mark," she thought. "We'll see each other very soon, and you won't be ready. You?" As soon as Mark left, Sarah launched into action. She took Liam and Sophie to Chloe's house, who had eagerly offered to watch them. "Ready for the big reveal?" Chloe asked with a playful grin, taking the kids' backpacks. Sarah nodded, her chest fluttering with a mix of nerves and anticipation. "More than ready," she answered with quiet determination, and though a faint sparkle in her eyes hinted at her inner vulnerability. "Remember what I said," Chloe reminded her. "Tonight isn't just about him. It's about you. You're stepping into the version of yourself you were always meant to be." Sarah hugged her friend tightly. After saying goodbye to the kids, she returned to the salon for final preparations. This was her moment of full transformation. The salon staff greeted her like royalty. As soon as she removed her coat, they surrounded her, working in harmony to perfect every detail. Her hair, now styled in soft, luminous waves, cascaded down with graceful ease. Her makeup refreshed for the occasion, intensified her eyes, and gave her the look of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Finally, the moment came to slip into the red dress she had selected days earlier. It hugged her frame with precision, with a thigh-high slit that added just the right touch of boldness. She paired it with the black patent stilettos she had purchased. Sleek, commanding, Sarah looked like she had stepped straight out of a fashion spread. Standing before the full-length mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time in years, she saw the woman Mark had tried to erase, a vibrant, radiant woman, full of life and undeniably stunning. "Miss Sarah, you look absolutely breathtaking," one of the stylists said, gazing at her with admiration. Sarah smiled, and this time it wasn't a hesitant or shy expression. It was the smile of a woman who knew her value without question. "Thank you, I'm ready." The event was being held at an upscale hotel in downtown Atlanta. The ballroom lights sparkled like stars, casting a warm glow on the elegant decor. Soft orchestral music flowed through the air, adding a refined ambiance. Guests, executives, partners, top employees, and their dates walked the red carpet in evening gowns and tuxedos, ready for a night steeped in prestige. Mark had already arrived, arm in arm with Emily, who wore a tight, short dress that drew plenty of attention. Some of Mark's colleagues shared discreet glances, clearly uneasy with his choice of date. But Mark, as usual, was too self-centered to notice. "Mark, how's Sarah?" asked one of the senior partners, patting him on the back. Mark tensed slightly, but kept a casual tone. "Oh, she decided to stay in. These kinds of events aren't really her thing." He chuckled, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He quickly pivoted the conversation to avoid further questions. What Mark didn't know was that Sarah was already en route. When her car pulled up in front of the hotel, Sarah took a deep breath before stepping out. The chauffeur opened the door, and as she emerged, the slit in her red dress revealed just a glimpse of her legs with each step. Every move toward the entrance turned heads. "Who is she?" whispered one of the staff, helping guests with coats. "No idea," someone else replied, "but she looks like she walked off a movie set." The whispers spread as Sarah glided through the hotel lobby, chin lifted, eyes forward, completely unaffected by the stares. When she reached the grand ballroom, conversation slowed to a hush. Every eye turned toward her, captivated. There was something about her presence, the way she moved, the power in her posture that demanded attention. Mark stood with his back to the entrance, laughing at something Emily had said when he noticed the sudden quiet in the room. His brow furrowed, and he slowly turned around, only to freeze in place. Standing at the entrance was Sarah, looking like she owned the room. His eyes widened, and his mouth parted in shock. Was that her? For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Sarah looked more stunning than he could ever recall. It wasn't just her appearance. It was her poise, her confidence, the unmistakable sense of independence that radiated from her. This wasn't the woman he had belittled for years. She was transformed. Beside him, Emily shifted awkwardly. The attention she had once basked in was gone. Now, every glance, every whisper, every breath of awe in the ballroom was directed at Sarah. "What the hell?" Mark murmured under his breath. Sarah, completely composed, walked further into the ballroom, ignoring him entirely. One of the company's senior partners, Mr. Davis, approached her with a warm, charismatic smile. "Good evening, madam. Have we met before?" he asked, clearly struck by her elegance. Sarah responded with calm assurance, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah, Mark's wife." Mr. Davis's expression shifted from surprise to genuine awe. then to admiration. Well, Mark has certainly been keeping a treasure hidden. Please, join me at the main table. You deserve to be the center of this evening. Sarah accepted the invitation with a grace that left Mark frozen in place. As she walked beside Mr. Davis toward the table reserved for the firm's elite, the entire ballroom remained fixated on her. The atmosphere was electric with tension, and Mark could feel his grip on his image, his authority, slipping away with every step she took. She was now seated among the company's most powerful figures at the center of the evening's attention. Mark, still rooted in his seat, could only watch the public unraveling of everything he thought he controlled. The woman he had dismissed, belittled, and pushed aside for years was now the one commanding the room. Whispers of admiration buzzed throughout the space, and each admiring glance aimed at Sarah felt like a dagger digging deeper into Mark's pride. Emily, who had been soaking in attention just moments earlier, now fidgeted beside Mark. Her outfit, once bold and eye-catching, now looked garish and inappropriate next to Sarah's effortless sophistication. She leaned closer to Mark, trying to draw his gaze back. "Mark," she whispered, attempting to smile. But his eyes never left Sarah, his expression dark with disbelief and barely restrained fury. A colleague nearby leaned in and asked, "Who is she? You never mentioned your wife before. She's remarkable." Mark clenched his jaw, forcing a stiff, artificial smile. "Oh, that's Sarah, my wife. She usually doesn't attend these types of functions." He tried to sound dismissive, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. His colleague raised a brow, unconvinced. Well, maybe she should. She has more presence than anyone else in this room. That comment hit Mark like a slap. His composure, his status, the image he had carefully cultivated. Everything was unraveling in front of a room full of witnesses. It was no longer just about losing control over Sarah. It was about losing the respect of his peers. His image, the mask he wore so confidently, was cracking. A thin sheen of sweat began to form on his brow. Never before had Mark felt his reputation threatened. He had always been the accomplished one, the one others respected, the one in control. But now, he was just the man who had been eclipsed by the very woman he had tried to diminish. He couldn't take it anymore. Abruptly he stood, ignoring Emily, who looked at him with quiet desperation. "Where are you going?" she whispered. But Mark didn't respond. He marched directly toward the main table, his face hardened with fury. All around, the volume of murmurs rose. Every guest turned their eyes toward the scene unfolding, waiting for the confrontation to begin. "Excuse me," Mark said in a cold, clipped tone, cutting into the conversation Sarah was having with Mr. Davis and the others at the table. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice, but just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Can we speak in private?" Sarah slowly looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was no fear there, no submission, just calm composure that immediately unsettled him. "Of course not, Mark," she replied, her tone serene as she took a sip of her wine. "If there's something you need to say, go ahead. I've got nothing to hide." Her words knocked the air from his lungs. He had expected her to rise, to follow him without hesitation like she always did. But instead, she stood her ground in front of everyone. "I don't think this is the place for that," he muttered, his voice sharper now, trying to maintain control. Sarah gently set her glass back on the table and folded her hands in her lap. Then she looked him straight in the eyes, unflinching. "This? Do you mean the fact that I'm not sitting at home while you show off tonight? Or are you referring to me proving that I'm not the faded version of myself you created so you could feel superior?" Mr. Davis, seated beside her, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. The rest of the table feigned interest in their drinks, but the tension was undeniable. Everyone was listening. Mark clenched his fists, leaning in closer as his voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah, don't make a scene. This isn't a game." She smiled, but there was steel behind it now. "A scene? A game?" she echoed, her voice calm but firm. "Mark, do you think all the years of your belittling, your criticism, your humiliation were a game?" She paused deliberately, letting the silence fill with weight. "This isn't a scene, Mark. It's a reminder. So you never forget who I really am." Mark felt unsteady, as if the floor beneath him had shifted. For years he had called the shots, decided what mattered, who mattered. But now, Sarah stood before him with something he thought he had buried forever. Her dignity. The silence around the table was heavy. Mr. Davis, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke. "Sarah, I must say, you've truly impressed us tonight. It's rare to meet someone with such presence and grace. I hope we'll be seeing more of you at future events." Sarah thanked him with a soft, genuine smile. Mark, meanwhile, turned toward Mr. Davis with a look torn between envy and disbelief. He could feel his grip on everything slipping. "Well," Sarah said, her tone smooth and poised, "perhaps in the future I'll be a regular guest." She knew perfectly well the blow that line delivered to Mark's pride. Across the room, Emily watched it all unfold. She felt invisible, diminished. Her plan to steal the spotlight had collapsed entirely. No one was looking at her. No one was whispering her name. All eyes were on Sarah, the woman who, according to Mark, shouldn't even be there. Mark tried to reclaim control. "Mr. Davis, excuse me, but I need a word with my wife in private. This is a personal matter." Mr. Davis turned toward him, raising an eyebrow. "Mark, I think Sarah is perfectly comfortable where she is, and honestly, it seems she has much more to say tonight." The quiet laughter that followed at the table felt like a slap to Mark's face. There was no escaping the humiliation now. Sarah met his gaze with unwavering calm, and it rattled him. "Don't worry, Mark," she said gently. "If you need a moment to collect yourself, I can wait. I'm in no rush." Mark clenched his jaw. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't make things worse. Sarah had won this round, and she had done it publicly. As she resumed her conversation with Mr. Davis and the others, Mark turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff and his expression hardened. The evening he had meticulously planned had collapsed into disaster. He returned to his table like a man defeated, every step heavier than the last. He could feel the eyes following him, some surprised, others disdainful. But all of them witnesses to the moment his carefully built image cracked. Sarah had flipped the narrative, and he had no idea how to recover. When he reached the table, Emily greeted him with an uneasy glance, fully aware that the energy in the room had shifted. Her flirtatious confidence was gone, replaced by awkward insecurity. She attempted to restart the conversation. "Mark," she said, leaning closer. "What just happened? Why didn't you tell me she was coming?" He turned toward her slowly, his eyes dark with restrained fury. "I didn't know," he replied through gritted teeth, the bitterness in his voice unmistakable. Emily forced a smile, trying to minimize the damage. "Well, don't worry. No one really cares that much." "Shut up, Emily," he snapped, cutting her off abruptly. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The sharpness in his voice stunned her, making her shrink back into her seat, hurt and embarrassed. Mark's eyes drifted back to the head table, back to Sarah. She hadn't even spared him a glance, and yet she was dismantling the image he had worked so hard to craft. She didn't need him to shine, and that reality shattered him. Meanwhile, Sarah was savoring every second of her victory. every exchange with Mr. Davis and the other partners affirmed everything Mark had tried to strip away from her. Her self-worth, her confidence, her voice. For years, he had convinced her she wasn't enough, that her place was in the shadows while he basked in the spotlight. But tonight, the entire ballroom saw her for what she truly was, a woman of strength, elegance, and undeniable presence. "Sarah," Mr. Davis asked, leaning in with genuine curiosity, "have you ever considered taking on corporate interior design projects?" Sarah turned toward him with interest. "Well, I used to work as an interior designer," Sarah said, her tone even. "But I stopped after getting married." Though she delivered the words calmly, a small knot twisted in her stomach. Saying it out loud, acknowledging the sacrifice she had made for Mark, still stung. It wasn't just the loss of a job, it was the loss of her identity, of the vibrant woman who once saw beauty in every space and color palette. The woman who used to dream in mood boards and design plans. She buried that version of herself quietly, little by little, until she barely remembered what it felt like to create something for herself. Mr. Davis nodded thoughtfully. "That's unfortunate. From what I've seen tonight, I can tell you have a sharp eye for detail. If you ever think about returning to the field, I believe you'd be highly successful. Actually, my company is preparing to renovate a few of our offices." He let the offer hang in the air, the implication unmistakable. Sarah smiled, a flicker of excitement lighting in her chest. Could she really reclaim that part of her life? The possibility stirred something inside her, a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that she might revive a piece of herself long buried. Fear of believing too soon that life could offer her more. But most of all, it was possibility, and it felt electric. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll give it serious thought." Her voice was sincere, and her smile was warm. Mr. Davis seemed genuinely pleased with her response, and their conversation flowed on naturally, completely disregarding Mark's smoldering glare from across the ballroom. As the evening progressed, Mark noticed something far worse than admiration for Sarah. People had begun whispering about him. He couldn't catch all the words, but he didn't need to. The disapproving looks said it all. The murmurs held the same unspoken question. How could a man like him treat a woman like her that way? Each glance felt like a pinprick tearing at the fragile image he had constructed for years. It was no longer just about losing control over Sarah. It was about losing the respect of his peers. His image, the mask he wore so confidently, was cracking. A thin sheen of sweat began to form on his brow. Never before had Mark felt his reputation threatened. He had always been the accomplished one, the one others respected, the one in control. But now, he was just the man who had been eclipsed by the very woman he had tried to diminish. He couldn't take it anymore. Abruptly he stood, ignoring Emily, who looked at him with quiet desperation. "Where are you going?" she whispered. But he didn't reply. He marched directly toward the head table where Sarah sat, still the center of the evening's attention. "You seem to be enjoying yourself, Sarah," he said bitterly, his voice sharp with tension. Sarah glanced up with composure, as if she had been expecting the interruption. "I am, Mark. Thanks for asking." Her voice was soft, almost playful, and it hit him hard. "Can we talk now?" He pushed, his irritation rising with her poise. Before Sarah could reply, Mr. Davis stepped in. "Mark, with all due respect, Sarah appears to be enjoying the evening. Perhaps you could wait until it concludes." His tone was courteous but firm, leaving no room for argument. Mark's eyes narrowed. Since when had his business partner spoken to him like that? "This is a personal matter," he said stiffly, clinging to what little control he had left. Sarah, who had remained quiet, finally turned toward him with steady eyes. "I believe Mr. Davis is right," she said. "This isn't the time or the place." Then she added with a cool edge, "And besides, I have nothing more to say to you for now." The weight behind her words silenced him completely. That one phrase, "for now," made it clear that she held the reins now. Mark stood frozen, fists clenched, jaw tight. He had nothing left to say, because Sarah had taken everything back. He couldn't win this battle. Not here, not now. Sarah turned back to Mr. Davis, entirely dismissing Mark, who was left standing there and forced to retreat under the curious stares of the entire room. That walk back to his seat felt like a lifetime. Each pair of eyes in the ballroom was a silent witness to his downfall. Each glance a reminder that the power he once wielded so effortlessly had evaporated in a single evening. As Mark returned to his table, Emily tried to speak, but he silenced her with a sharp wave of his hand. His jaw was tight, and his face flushed with humiliation. But beyond the anger, what truly shook him was the fear. Fear that he had been exposed, not just as a man who lost control, but as a man who never truly had it to begin with. Sarah was no longer the meek, compliant woman he once controlled. She had become a force, and he had no idea how to stop her. Mark was unraveling. He had never experienced such a crushing blow to his ego and authority. Sarah, the woman he had subdued for years, hadn't just slipped out of his grip. She now radiated with a confidence that outshined him in front of every one of his peers. And worst of all, she was making him look weak, small, laughable. Sitting at his table, fists clenched, Mark tried to think, how do I get back control? But nothing came. Every old tactic, his cutting words, his manipulation, his control, they were powerless now. She was beyond reach. His mind scrambled, reaching for anything that could restore the balance. But every thought led to a dead end. He had underestimated her resolve, and now he was paying the price. Emily, still beside him, attempted to salvage the moment, babbling about the decor and other guests. But Mark couldn't stand to even look at her. Everything she symbolized, her youth, her looks, the shallow image he had tried to craft, now felt hollow. Compared to Sarah, Emily looked immature, out of place, pointless. He suddenly saw her not as an accessory to boost his ego, but as a symbol of everything superficial and fleeting. While Sarah now stood as something real, solid, and utterly beyond his reach. Unable to endure the humiliation any longer, Mark stood again. He wouldn't let Sarah keep undermining him, not in front of everyone. He would confront her, even if it meant creating a scene. Sarah was deep in conversation with Mr. Davis and the others when she sensed Mark coming. This time she met his eyes. Her look was calm, but unyielding. She didn't flinch. "Sarah," Mark said sharply, "we need to talk, now." Mr. Davis raised an eyebrow, clearly irritated. "Mark, we already addressed this earlier. Sarah is occupied." "This has nothing to do with you, Davis," Mark snapped. But Mr. Davis didn't budge. Before the tension could grow, Sarah stepped in. "It's all right, Mr. Davis." She stood gracefully, wine glass in hand. Her composure didn't waver. "If Mark wants to talk, I'm willing to hear him out." Mark let out a heavy breath, relieved to finally get her attention. But before he could move to another room, Sarah added, "Right here is fine. There's nothing Mark has to say that can't be said in front of everyone." Her tone was steady. Her eyes dared him to proceed. If Mark wanted a confrontation, she would give it to him, but on her terms. The people at the table shifted uneasily. No one wanted to interfere, but no one looked away either. Everyone was visibly invested in what was about to unfold. Mark, cornered by his own ego, had no choice but to accept the condition. "You really want to do this here?" he asked through gritted teeth, trying to pressure her into backing down. Sarah returned a cool, unwavering smile. "You were the one who insisted on talking, Mark. I'm listening. Go ahead." Mark looked around, the weight of every gaze in the ballroom settling on his shoulders. There was no escape now. "Fine," he muttered, his voice strained. "What the hell are you trying to prove, Sarah? Why come here like this, just to wreck my night? Is this some childish payback?" Sarah took a casual sip of her wine, her expression unfazed. "Wreck your night?" she echoed with biting irony. "No, Mark, I didn't come here for you. I came for me because I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible. Tonight, I wanted to remind you and me exactly who I am." Mark clenched his fists in fury. He was losing the upper hand, and he knew it. "And you think this makes you look good?" he snapped, his voice rising. "You think walking in here like you own the place makes you some kind of queen? Sarah, you're making a fool of yourself." A heavy silence followed. His words landed like a slap, but Sarah didn't flinch. She remained poised, calm, immovable. "Foolish?" she repeated softly. "Is that what you think, Mark? I'm not surprised. You've always been good at tearing me down, haven't you?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it struck with laser precision. "For years you've mocked me, belittled me, made me feel like I was never enough. But not tonight. Tonight, Mark. You don't get to control me anymore." Her words rippled through the room like thunder. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Mark stood speechless for the first time, his mouth slightly open, searching for a retort, and finding none. "You've always been terrified someone might find out who you really are," Sarah continued, stepping closer, her tone sharp and steady. "A man who has to crush others just to feel powerful. But tonight, everyone sees the truth. Everyone sees you." Mark felt the floor slipping from beneath him. Never in his life had he been confronted so directly, much less in front of his colleagues and peers. He scrambled for something, anything to say. But nothing came. Sarah had stripped away every illusion, every layer of control, and he had no defense left. Finally, Sarah took a final sip of her wine and placed the glass gently on the table. She looked at Mark with a serene smile. "Thank you for inviting me tonight, Mark. It's been quite enlightening." With that, she turned and walked back to her seat, leaving Mark frozen in place, humiliated, defeated, exposed. As Sarah resumed her conversation with Mr. Davis and the others, Mark stood there for a moment longer, his pride shattered before turning silently and walking out of the ballroom. He didn't say a word. He didn't look back. And he left Emily sitting alone at their table, awkward, confused, and abandoned. That night, as the music played and laughter filled the room, Sarah knew she had reclaimed something Mark had tried for years to break: her dignity, her voice, and most importantly, her freedom. Chapter 4. The Path to Freedom. Sarah woke the next morning in the guest bedroom of Chloe's home. Sunlight poured through the soft curtains, and the distant sound of her children playing in the living room brought a gentle smile to her lips. She had slept in peace. No tension, no fear, no Mark. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, like a heavy burden had finally lifted off her shoulders. Sitting up in bed, Sarah closed her eyes briefly, replaying the moments from the night before. Her powerful entrance, Mark's stunned reaction, and the words she had delivered without trembling. She had never imagined herself capable of confronting him so publicly. But she had, and she had prevailed. Now, with her mind clear, Sarah knew this wasn't just a personal win. It was a turning point, the beginning of something far more permanent. She rose, washed her face, and gazed into the mirror. What she saw looking back was not the same woman from months ago. Her hair, still styled from the night before, framed a face filled with purpose. The old uncertainty in her eyes was gone, replaced with resolve. There was fire now. There was strength. There was a woman who finally knew her worth. In the kitchen, Chloe was waiting with a warm cup of coffee and her usual gentle smile. "Well, how does the star of last night feel this morning?" Chloe asked, sliding over another mug. Sarah sat at the table and wrapped her hands around the cup, savoring the warmth. "I feel free," she said, with a quiet but certain smile. "And ready." Chloe lifted an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Sarah took a sip, then looked her friend directly in the eyes. "Ready to end this. I'm filing for divorce." Chloe set her cup down with a soft thud, caught off guard. "Are you sure?" "More than ever," Sarah replied without missing a beat. "Last night wasn't just about standing up to him. It was about ending it, for good. Mark has belittled me for years, Chloe. Treated me like I was disposable, something he could control, then toss aside when it suited him. But that ends now. I'm not that woman anymore." Chloe looked at her quietly for a long moment, letting the words sink in. Then a proud smile slowly spread across her face. "That's the Sarah I always knew was there." Sarah reached across the table and gently squeezed her friend's hand. "Thank you for everything, Chloe. For looking out for me, for taking care of the kids, for reminding me who I really am. I couldn't have done this without you." Her voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming gratitude that surged in her chest. This was the first time in a long while she had felt truly seen. "Don't thank me," Chloe said with a warm but firm tone. "Just promise me you'll never lose yourself again." Sarah nodded, and in her eyes there was no doubt, no hesitation. There was no going back. Later that day, Sarah returned to her house with the kids. As she drove, her mind was steady. She knew what was coming wouldn't be easy, that Mark would resist, but she also knew she was ready. The silence inside the car wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, and every glance at her children in the rearview mirror reminded her of why she had to stand strong. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. When they arrived, the children ran happily to their rooms, laughing and playing, while Sarah walked into the living room. Mark was there, sitting on the couch, glued to his phone. His brow was furrowed, and he looked worn, still clearly rattled from the night before. He looked up as she entered. "So, you finally decided to come home," he said sarcastically, setting the phone on the table. "Had fun playing the runaway wife at your friend's place while I cleaned up your little show?" Sarah met his tone with calm indifference. "Mark, we need to talk." He blinked, surprised by her poise. "Talk about what?" She sat across from him, her posture tall, her voice unwavering. "I'm filing for divorce." The words didn't tremble. They were measured and strong, spoken like a verdict, not a question. The words hit like a punch. Mark stared at her as if he didn't understand. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Sarah replied. "I want a divorce. This is over." He let out a dry, bitter laugh. "You've lost your mind, Sarah. After everything I've given you, after all these years, you're seriously just going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," she said. "You did that, Mark, when you chose to degrade me, when you put your pride and image above your family. You ended this long ago. I'm just making it official." Mark stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're overreacting. Last night, It was just a misunderstanding. I was mad, that's all. You know I didn't mean anything by it." His voice cracked with desperation, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew the excuses were weak, and worse, ineffective. He stumbled over his words, trying to find something that would stick. Sarah raised a hand to silence him. Don't give me excuses. I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you that this will be resolved, but not on your terms anymore. We'll do this in court." Mark's expression hardened. "What are you saying?" "I know my rights," she said clearly. "I'm entitled to half of everything. The house, the savings, all of it. You can fight, but I'm not backing down. I won't be your doormat anymore. I'm done letting you humiliate me." Mark's fists clenched at his sides. His jaw tightened as he struggled to hold back his anger. "Oh, so now you're a legal expert too, Sarah?" Mark scoffed bitterly. "Where did this version of you come from?" Sarah stood up slowly, meeting his eyes head on. "It came from the pain you caused me. It came from the nights I cried myself to sleep because of your words. It came from the years I spent believing I wasn't enough." Her voice didn't shake. Her spine was straight. Her chin lifted, not out of defiance, but because she finally understood the weight she had carried for so long. And she was done carrying it. She took a step forward. "And now, Mark, that broken woman you left behind, she's standing. And I promise you, she's never gonna fall again." Each word landed like a hammer, measured, deliberate, and irrevocable. Mark stared at her, trying to assert dominance, but it was futile. She wasn't the same woman anymore. "This will be settled in court," Sarah repeated calmly. "And I don't care how long it takes. I'll make sure I get everything I'm owed. And you're going to learn what it means to treat people like trash." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Mark opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She had taken away even his last weapon, intimidation. Without another word, Sarah turned and walked to her room, closing the door behind her. She exhaled deeply, a mix of finality and liberation washing over her. She had taken her power back, and she wasn't going to lose it again. Mark remained motionless on the couch, stunned by everything she'd said. Her words echoed in his head. "You're never going to use me as a doormat again. This is going to be resolved legally. You're going to learn that you can't treat people the way you treated me." For the first time in his life, Mark was truly lost. He had always called the shots, always dictated the rules. But now the game had changed, and he was no longer in control. The walls of the home he once ruled now felt foreign, every corner echoing with a sense of defeat he couldn't escape. Suddenly, he jumped to his feet and stormed to his office, slamming the door. He immediately began making calls. His first call was to a lawyer friend, but the response wasn't what he wanted to hear. "Mark," the voice on the other end said bluntly, "if Sarah takes this to court, you're in trouble. She has every right to half of everything, especially if you've used joint finances for personal spending." But Mark was silent, the reality beginning to set in. All his bravado, all his years of manipulation, it was all unraveling. Sarah wasn't bluffing, and worse, she was informed. That night, Mark tossed and turned in bed, while Sarah lay beside him, sleeping soundly, peacefully. That infuriated him more than anything. How could she be so calm? How could she already be at peace, like she had won? But deep down, Mark knew the answer. Because she had. The next morning, Sarah woke up early as usual. But this time, something was different. Her energy was focused, centered, strong. She made breakfast for Liam and Sophia, helped them get dressed and ready for school, while Mark stayed holed up in his office, avoiding her completely. Once the children were gone, Sarah sat down in the living room, a folder in her hand. Inside was everything she had gathered over the last few days: bank statements, legal notices, financial records. Sarah had everything neatly organized in a folder on the coffee table. Every page was evidence, every detail, a step toward freedom. She was in control now. And for the first time in her life, that control didn't feel like borrowed courage. It felt earned, tangible, irrefutable. When Mark finally emerged from his office and saw Sarah sitting there, that folder spread open in front of her, his chest tightened. He immediately sensed the confrontation was coming. "What's that?" he asked sharply, gesturing toward the folder. Sarah looked up at him, completely unshaken. "Everything I need for the divorce." Her voice carried no bitterness, just fact, as unmovable as the ground beneath her feet. Mark's jaw clenched. Frustration surged through him. "You're really going to go through with this? Do you even understand what you're doing?" Sarah crossed her legs slowly, her tone steady. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking back my life, with or without your cooperation." Her gaze never wavered. It pierced through every empty excuse he might have been preparing. Mark scoffed, searching for a way to regain control. "And what do you think you're going to get out of this? Money? Payback? Sarah, do you really believe you'll come out of this better than you already are?" She looked at him with unwavering resolve. "It's not about money or revenge. It's about respect. It's about never letting anyone treat me the way you have. This isn't to punish you, Mark. It's to liberate me from you." Each word fell like a final verdict. She wasn't here to debate. She was here to declare. Her words landed hard. Mark stood still, staring at her, trying to find something, anything, that would give him the upper hand again. But the power had shifted, and he could feel it slipping further with every breath she took. "What about the kids?" he asked finally, clutching for leverage. "You want to rip their family apart? You're going to ruin their lives, Sarah." She didn't even flinch. "The only thing I'm tearing down is the example you were setting for them. I won't let them grow up thinking it's normal for a woman to be disrespected, or that a man has the right to dominate someone's life. They'll be just fine, because now they have a mother who knows what she's worth." Her tone held steel, not spite. She was fighting for more than herself now. Mark was stunned into silence. Over the following days, Sarah began taking real action. She met with a lawyer who walked her through every aspect of the case. The attorney confirmed what she already suspected. Her claim was solid. Her rights were intact. She also started seeing a therapist, something she had postponed for years. She needed to process the damage Mark had done, not just legally, but emotionally. She wasn't just fighting in court. She was healing. Layer by layer, she was peeling off the pain until only strength remained. Every choice, every meeting, every step she took was part of a larger plan. Her rebirth. And Mark? He was unraveling. He walked through the house like a ghost, haunted by the reality that he no longer held the reins. The silence that used to punish her now punished him. Each time he saw Sarah standing tall, moving with a quiet certainty, it triggered a storm inside him. Rage, fear, disbelief. He couldn't stop her. He knew that now. Still, one evening, he tried again, his voice softer this time. Controlled. Calculated. "Sarah," he began, "can't we work this out just between us? No lawyers, no court. We don't have to turn this into a public mess. Let's handle it discreetly." Sarah looked Mark squarely in the eyes, not a trace of hesitation in her gaze. "A discreet solution?" she repeated slowly. "You mean keeping everything quiet and hidden like you've always preferred?" "No, Mark, not anymore. This isn't going to be secret because I have nothing to hide, and neither should you." Mark's jaw tightened. He was quickly running out of angles, and he knew it. What did you even get out of this, Sarah? He asked, almost desperate now. She rose from her chair, picked up the folder of documents, and gave him one last look before walking toward her room. I got something you never understood, she said quietly. I got my freedom. With that, she left the room, leaving Mark alone to face the truth. He had lost her for good, and there was nothing he could do to change that. Through Sarah's journey, there's something every woman should remember. Your worth is not determined by anyone else. Don't let cruel words, humiliation, or criticism put out your inner flame, because within you lies a strength that can lift you up, even in the darkest times. Being a mother, a homemaker, or pursuing any path you choose does not make you less. You are capable, valuable, and worthy of respect. No one has the right to make you feel small, not because of your appearance, your choices, or your sacrifices. Love and self-worth start with you. Toxic relationships and emotional abuse, whether public or private, should never be normalized or tolerated. If someone tries to tear you down or make you feel unworthy, remember this: you don't need anyone to validate your power. You deserve respect, dignity, and love. And if someone tries to crush your spirit, know this: you can rise again, because the strength inside you cannot be destroyed. You are not alone. Seek support, learn your rights, surround yourself with people who uplift and appreciate you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Like Sarah, you have the power to reclaim your life, rebuild your confidence, and rediscover the extraordinary woman you've always been. You are powerful. You are valuable. You are enough. So that's how the story ends. Or perhaps begins again, don't you think? And if you're still here, still watching or reading until this very moment, then maybe, just maybe, something in Sarah's journey has touched your heart in a quiet, powerful way. If so, take a moment with me now. Let's look at this not just as a story, but as something we can carry into our own lives. Sarah's transformation wasn't just about red dresses or dramatic entrances. It was about rediscovering her self-worth. It was about walking through fire and realizing she could survive without waiting for permission. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Sarah took back her freedom not by fighting Mark with anger, but by stepping into her power with grace. How many times have we stayed silent just to keep the peace? How many times have we convinced ourselves we're too broken, too late, too tired to start again? Sarah's story reminds us that healing begins the moment we say, "No more." Remember, healing isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet decision at your kitchen table, a whisper that says, "I am enough." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. If this story stirred something in you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. There are more stories like this waiting for you. More reminders that even when life tries to dim your light, you are still the flame. Thank you truly for being here. You matter, and your story's not over yet. We'll see you in the next one.